Okay, in this tutorial we're going to be looking at combinations of functions. Okay, so the first ones we're looking at are what we call hybrid or piecewise functions. So they're basically a function that's made up of lots of other little functions. Okay, so as we can see here, we might have this function r of x, s of x and t of x that go to making up an overall function f of x. And we see where we define f of x like this, where we say, well, r of x is for all values less than a, but not including, because we're in an open dot. Okay, it's s of x between a and b, including a, because we're in a closed dot. Okay, and it's t of x for all values larger than b, and we include b because we're a closed dot. Okay, we don't come across these too often, but we do a little bit later on as well. Okay, so we'll look at an example very quickly. Okay, so we've got a function which is defined by f of x equals square root of negative x, okay, when x is less than or equal to negative 1. It's 2 minus x squared for negative 1 to x to 1, and it's the square root of x plus 1 for everything larger than 1. Okay, and we want to start off with, we want to find f of negative 1, f of 0 and f of 4. So to do this, basically we look at what x value we need and see where that falls in here. So negative 1 actually falls in this top one, okay, because we're including it in this one. Okay, so f of negative 1 will equal square root of negative 1, which is square root of 1, which is just 1. Okay, f of 0, well, we can see that's going to fall in here. Okay, so that's going to be 2 take 0 squared, so that's going to be 2. Okay, and f of 4, we can see that's going to fall in the last one, which is going to equal the square root of 4 plus 1, that's going to equal 3. Okay, the next part is we need to sketch the function. Okay, so we'll set up some axes here. Okay, I'd always mark on where your endpoints are of each sort of section. So we've got negative 1 and we've got positive 1. Okay, so we know, okay, that f of negative 1, our endpoint, okay, also gives us a y value of 1 as well. So we know this one's going to be starting there. Okay, and it looks like negative square root of x, so it's going to go back that way. Okay, the second one we're talking about 2 minus x squared, and again we know at 0, okay, that our function is equal to 2. Okay, and that was 1. Okay, we still need our endpoints there though really, so if we put in minus 1 into here, okay, we're going to get, well, 2 take minus 1 squared is going to be 1, and if we put 1 in there we're also going to get 1. Okay, so you can see we're actually going to come up like so. Okay, and when we don't actually include our endpoint for this one, we don't include it for this curve here as well, but because it's the same point, we've already had to colour it in for our previous one, so we've got to leave it coloured in. Okay, and the last one is that we're square root of x plus 1. Okay, for here, and we know for that one, well, we need to put in 1 into here. When we do that, you see we get 2. Okay, so we're going to start up here. Okay, and we're just going to curve that way. Okay, and you could have put in, we could have had this extend up to 4 and you would have had 3 as well. Probably should have extended my axes a little bit further there, but that's okay. Alright, we'll keep moving on. Okay, so sum, difference and product functions. Okay, so sum functions, okay, they're made up of 2 functions added together. So we write it as f plus g of x equals f of x plus g of x. Difference is when we've got f minus g of x, which is the same as f of g take f of, f of x take f of g of x, sorry. And product functions is f times g of x, which is f of x times g of x. Now the important things here is these are only defined, okay, for the domain that overlap for the individual ones. So where the domain of f of x and g of x overlap, then we'll have these defined. Okay, so we have two different types here. One where we know our functions and one where we don't know our functions. Okay, if we know our functions, the absolute best thing to do, okay, is set up a table of values. Okay, work out some values for f and g, and then work out from our values what these must be. Okay, so what we're going to look at, okay, is we've got a worked example that we'll look at. So we've got consider the functions f and g defined as f of x equals the square root of 4 plus x, and g of x is equal to square root of 4 minus x. Okay, and then we need to form the rule for the sum function, staying in its domain and sketching the graph. Okay, so we'll look at that first. Okay, so what we need to do is really need to think about our domains here. Okay, so our domain of f of x. Okay, well we need to think about what's going on here. Okay, so for here we think of this as x plus 4. So what that means is we're being translated to the left, okay, by 4 units. So we really say our domain is from -4 to infinity. Our domain for g of x. Okay, now remember this one's actually, we can think of this as our -1, so it's going to be shaped like that. But really, our g of x, we've got to be careful with that, okay, because we need to be thinking about which way it's being translated. And it hasn't been translated to the left, it's actually been translated to the right, because this can be written as the square root of -x take 4. Okay, so that's actually going to have a domain of -infinity to +4. Okay, so we should be able to see there that our domain of f of x plus g of x, okay, is going to be from -4 to +4. Okay, that's our start. Okay, so we know that, so what I do now is set up a table of values. Okay, so we go, well, we've got x, we've got f of x, we've got g of x, and we've got f of x plus g of x. Okay, so we need to put some values into our equation. So when we put -4 in here, okay, when we put -4 into this one, then f of x is going to be the square root of 0, so that's just going to be 0. Okay, when we put in -4 into here, we're going to be the square root of 8. So just leave it as root 8 at the moment. So when we add them together, we're going to get root 8. Okay, when we put in -3 into here, we're going to get the square root of 1, which is just 1. When we put into here, okay, we're going to get the square root of 7. Okay, so then that means that we get 1 plus root 7. Now I've left myself a lot of room here. Okay, and so we keep going on like that. Okay, so you can see we find our individual values. Okay, so we'll keep going. So if we put in -2 here, we're the square root of 2. Okay, if we put -2 here, we're the square root of 6. Okay, so we're going to be root 2 plus root 6. Okay, and some of these may not, well, you might be thinking, well, surds, that's not really going to help me very much when it comes to graphing. But look, you can always just grab out a calculator and work out what they would be in decimal to get your head around it a little bit more if you need to. Okay, when we put in -1 here, okay, we're going to be root 3. -1 here, we're going to be root 5. So I think you can see a bit of a pattern that's happening here. Well, 0, we're going to be square root of 4, 0 is going to be the square root of 4, so at 2. Okay, so you can see what's happening a little bit here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll set up some axes. Don't leave myself a lot of room. Okay, but we'll put in -4 and we'll put in +4. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll draw these two graphs first. Okay, and then we'll put in our new one in a second. Okay, so we know that we're going something like this. Okay, and so our new graph, okay, at 0 we're going to be 4, so again I probably didn't leave myself a lot of room here because it's going to be right up there anyway. Okay, and you can see at our endpoint, okay, that this one doesn't actually add anything to it, okay, which will be this one here. Okay, so this will be our f of x, this will be our g of x on this side. Okay, so our f of x doesn't add anything to it. Okay, so we're going to be there. The same thing would happen up here. Okay, we're going to put in 4 into this one. Okay, it's going to be 0. Okay, so it's not going to give us anything either. Okay, and then if you want to, you can plot all of these points along here, okay, to get your shape of your graph. Okay, but we can see that's going to be something like this. Okay, which would be your f of x plus g of x. Okay, so we'll keep moving on. Okay, when we're given the graphs, okay, then it can be a little bit trickier because we can't get our actual values. Okay, but any vertical asymptotes will remain. If f and x and g and x intersect at, say, the point AB, then A2B will be on the new graph. And this is for addition only. So this section is actually called addition of ordinates, okay, where we're just taking our y values and adding in our x values. But you can do it for subtraction and the product as well, but it's probably the easiest is when we've actually got our adding. So we've got a vertical asymptote here, so that's going to remain. Okay, we need to think, okay, well, they intersect here. Okay, so say this value was 1, which I think it might be. Okay, then because we've got 1 and 1, then we're going to end up here at 2. Okay, and if you look here, there's going to be some point along here, okay, because this graph is below, this graph is above. Okay, there's going to be some point here where our graphs are the same distance above and below the x-axis. So this could be, say, a half, a negative a half, added together, it's going to be 0. Okay, so now we'll take care of this side first. Okay, so when you look at this, okay, so we're crossing our x-axis here. So everywhere now on the left of this point, we've got a big value here, okay, and we're only taking away a small value. Okay, but we are taking away a small value because we're adding a negative. Okay, so it's going to be a little less than this. Okay, it's more or less going to follow this shape. Okay, and then here though, okay, we're big negative numbers and we're only adding on a small positive number. So we're going to more or less follow this shape as well. Okay, now we had this point in here that we knew, and again we've got these very, very big numbers. Okay, and we're going to add these small numbers on. But we're going to add them together, so our new graph is going to be above this graph. Okay, and same here, we've got big numbers, the small number added on, so we'll be more or less following this shape. Okay, but it'll be a little bit higher. Okay, and that's all there is for this section. Okay, so hopefully that's enough to get you all sorted.